Hello everyone, welcome to the course Disability Studies in India, Historical, Social and Cultural Perspectives. So, in this module I am talking about introducing the course to you, I am talking about methodology, I will be talking about definition and key concepts, and in this lecture number 3 I am going to talk about basic foundations of disability studies. So, in the first two lectures, I talked about how disability studies came into the existence, what are the disciplines that helped in establishing disability studies, how thinkers borrowed the concepts and ideas from different philosophies to talk about disability studies, and also talk about certain name of the thinkers and their books which are going to be helpful in our study of disability studies or to understand the discourse of disability studies. I also tried to touch upon certain assumptions and tried to challenge that the way we think about disability is not disability is that way to reorganize or rethink, but rather disability is something more complex phenomena. So, we need to think about disability from a very different understanding, from different perspectives, and that is what my focus was on in lecture number 2, right, how the shift is occurring from personal tragedy to a social problem, right. The shift is taking place where now it has become an object of study of other disciplines as well, all right. So, how the people are coming in 1970s, 1980s and bringing different perspectives and offering courses on disability studies, how it is being debated in social policies. So, in the lecture number 3, what I am going to do is going to talk about the basic foundation of disability studies. As in my previous lecture, you noticed that I gave a huge importance to pragmatism. I was talking about it, how Richard Rorty knew pragmatist and other pragmatist thinker are giving importance to the truth or to the basic evidence to talk about disability. So, for example, that what we are doing as a social and cultural thinkers, we are producing a truth about disability. Let us say, for example, we produced a truth about disability, that disability is a personal problem, it is a tragedy and it has to be addressed by other it is to be addressed by medical practitioner, right. This is what it is, a truth that was produced and it was inculcated in the consciousness of the people, and people carried this idea. But what is the evidence behind it to say that disability is a personal problem or disability is a personal tragedy, right? Who collected these data? Who is speaking on the behalf of people with disability? Who is arguing mainly about disability? It is the people with disability who are saying same, or there are some representative who are speaking about disability. And when we say it's a personal problem, how do we know that what kind of a problem is a social problem and what kind of a problem is a personal problem? Or it is a deliberate imposition, it is a politics behind imposing certain ideas on people with disabilities, right. So, here the point what I am making, the argument which I am raising for you is to understand that how people with disabilities are negatively projected and the very understanding about disability and people with disability is different. So, the one school that is extremely significant is pragmatism, because pragmatism played a very significant role in shaping sociology and later disability studies in the United States by offering a conceptual framework for addressing critical issues faced by social scientists. So, if you think about sociology, and I am sure that when you are going to look at poverty, when you are going to look at gender, when you are going to look at the caste issues, when are you going to look at the ethnic problems, there also pragmatism played a very significant role, and that is why I am talking about that, how pragmatism played a very significant role in shaping sociology. It also shaped disability studies, because if you remember that example that I gave, a person who is impaired but comes from a very upper class, and a girl who is impaired, she is a poverty stricken. Are they same? Or their experiences are the same? But if suppose we talk about the experience from the perspective of the person who is impaired but comes from a high upper class family, and according to that perspective, according to that understanding, we apply the same understanding about a girl who is poverty stricken and impaired, are we not doing injustice? Is not pragmatism coming in between and asking a question that whose data it is? How can you produce that truth? Whose truth it is, about whom it is? Right? So think about it, how the truth is produced, about whom that truth is being produced. So it suggested the kind of a data and analytical method that should be employed to build compelling arguments, right? What kind of a data is being brought before us to say something about people with disability? Who is involved in collecting their data? From where this data has been collected? What was the method to collect data? Whom it excluded, whom it included? So these are important questions that was raised by pragmatism. Pragmatism is trying to be more scientific in collecting the data, because it also promises that it can produce the truth. However, this school also has a certain disciplinary problems, but I am not going to talk about that. But what I am talking about is here that how pragmatism is helping disability studies. So pragmatism fostered an early interest among sociologists in collecting objective data through observations, through surveys and consensus, right? Census. Sorry for that. So this approach aimed to describe social phenomena, contribute to theoretical developments, and provide evidence to support arguments. So to say something, right? Let's say, for example, when I say that sun rises in the east and sets in the west, I am not going to accept it. Even if it is said by a teacher or any authoritative figure, or it is written in any holy book, pragmatism says that don't accept it. This truth is questionable. How do you know that sun rises in the east? And how do you know that sun sets in the west? From where did you collect the data? What was the observation? Whether your observation is not biased? What if just because your house is in that direction, so you say that it is the east, it is the north, it is the west, it is the south, and sun is rising from my this side, therefore from my courtyard side, and that is why this side is the east and sun rises in the east. No, it is not acceptable. If you say that disabled people are deprived of certain rights, it is their personal problem, they are going to ask questions. Observations is significant, understand this. Surveys, very important. Census, bring forth this. Let's say, for example, if I say that people with disability are basically cannot be employed because they are not honest, or they not do their work with honesty, or if we say that they cannot produce the same amount of efficiency that is produced by so-called able bodies. How did you know that? What if you are prejudiced, right? Where did you get that census from? What is your observation based upon? Where did you make this survey? and what kind of people were employed in those surveys, and where did you make this survey, when did you make this survey, on what account did you make these surveys, right. So, these are the question is going to be asked by the pragmatism, so that the truth can be placed. So, the approach, this pragmatist approach I am going in detail to talk about, so that you can think about it, so that you can understand disability. So, this approach is aiming to describe social phenomena which contribute to theoretical development and provide evidence to support arguments. So, both pragmatist and neo-pragmatist, both these pragmatist and neo-pragmatist, they continue to influence contemporary sociology and disability studies. So, among scholars in qualitative and cultural studies today, there is a strong focus on social construction of reality, the significance of individual experience, culture and context in interpreting behaviors and text. This includes actively listening to the voices of the subjects being studied and engaging in discourse between scholars and those individuals. So, this slide is specifically talking about that how we should be mindful in catering the interest of people with disabilities, how we should be very careful in thinking about disability studies, how we should talk about disability by taking people with disability into the consideration. All right. So, disability scholars have utilized this perspective to explore fundamental questions such as how does an impairment become a disability? Now, think for this important question that I am raising. Impairment is a different, which I will be dealing separately in detail in coming lectures. Right. So, how impairment become a disability? Which means that there is something involved in the process of making impaired body a disabled body. What is that process? Like disability scholars are asking these questions. What does disability signify for individuals with various impairments and across different cultures? What does disability signify for people with different kind of impairments, and also when they are in different cultures? What is the subjective experience of disability? How do others perceive, define and respond to disabled people? Is disability located within the individual, in the environment, or in the interaction between the two? How do medical professionals and service providers engage with disabled people, and why? I am asking these questions so that you can pause the video for a second and rethink on it. That is, environment has nothing to do with impairments. How a disabled body becomes an impaired body, or impaired body becomes a disabled body? What disability has to do with different cultures? If it is all about the body, what culture is doing? Because personally people feel that body is a natural, however it is not true. So, what is the role of a culture in shaping body, right? What is the subjective experience of disability? Who speaks about disability from whose perspective? What they think about it? Again, think about the examples that I gave. A girl, yes, a girl who is disabled and poverty stricken, and a man who is impaired and comes from a rich class, upper class. Are their experience going to be the same? Are their experience going to be the same? The answer is no. And how do medical professional and service provider engage with disabled people? How do they look at disability? What they think when they are examining impaired patients? What is their attitude? What is their perspective when they look at it? Right? So, these are the very significant and important questions that one must ask, one must raise. And this question can be responded differently, depends on what perspective you pick up. But obviously, you should have a very reasonable arguments to frame your ideas. So when you examine these questions, you are through a symbolic interaction lens, disability scholars have enriched both our theoretical and experiential understanding of what it means to be disabled. Because the moment we ask these questions, right, immediately our way to look at disability is going to be very different, not the same. The way we have been thinking about it, the way we have been considering about disability is not going to be the same. It's going to be different. Right? So the moment, like for a second, like you can do it, you can ask one of your friends to ask about disability, write on a page, and then ask the same person to ask these questions one by one. And then you say that now you write the same question which I ask you, what do you think about disability, in another page. I am sure that he is not going to be the same what he wrote before. Once he has pondered over these questions, once he has listened to these questions, I am pretty sure that he is going to respond to disability differently. And that is why it's very pertinent to raise questions, pertinent questions, reasonable questions, which addresses the problems, which makes you to think differently. So social interactionism is well suited for analyzing how social problems, behavior and institutions are constructed through social processes, right? It's like, it's not that the problem is always individual. Most of the time, most of the problems are social. It's not that behaviors are individual. Behavior becomes problematic when there is interaction with the society. Let's say, for example, you are sitting in a alone, simple room where no one can see you. Do you think any behavior, like your behavior will be objected? No, your behavior will not be objected because there is no interaction with the society. But suppose when you are walking on the public roads and then you do something, I am sure that it's going to be, people will object it, people will question it. So think about these two these two ways to look at social interactionism. Right, that the problems are social, problems are individual as well as social. Behaviors are social, institutions are constructed through these social processes. As Robertson very beautifully has noted down his point, that we are not born with any sense of a time, place, cause and effect, or the society in which we live. We learn about this concept through various social interaction, and what we learn is influenced by the society we inhabit and our specific role within it. Think about it, how society becomes extremely significant, the community and culture becomes extremely significant in shaping our behavior. Maybe in a particular society, if you look at the history and if you read the Henry Jacques Steiker's book, The History of Disability, you will see that in ancient Greek and Roman time, disability was not looked as the way it was looked in the Christian society. As the society evolved, people started discriminating people with disabilities because society started changing, time started getting changed, sense of a place, cause, effect started changing. New way of living started taking place. The older way of living was shunned away, right? So we learn about those concepts through social interaction. We get to know that how we are going to behave in the plane, we are get to know how to sit in the railways, or how we are going to sit in the trains, and it was also told to us how to sit in the car in the public transports or the personal car. You both sit in the personal car and in the public car differently. So your behavior changes, depends which society you inhabit. Your way of eating the food, your way of talking to the people, your way of making signals is always different. Depends which society. You all are human. We all are human in this world. The person living in US and the person living in Ghana, they both are human. But their way of behavior, approach, sense of time, world, society is not the same. It's very different. So, according to Berger and Luckman, reality is socially constructed through three processes: externalization, objectification, and internalization. So, I am going to talk about these three concepts and then I will end the lecture. Externalization, internalization, and objectification, these are the three processes according to Berger and Luckman through this society's reality is socially constructed. Why I am talking about these three? Because you can borrow these concepts to look at disability, that how disability is also constructed. What is externalization? Externalization occurs when people create cultural product through social interactions. In the context of disability, examples include lip reading and signing among deaf people, as well as the group cohesion formed by spinal cord injured people due to the visibility and significance of wheelchair use, right. So, you get to know about the cultural product and the social interaction in the society. So, what is a lip reading? Lip reading you do not learn from the birth, right, you learn it through the social interactions. You get to know how deaf people communicate, how you can communicate the deaf people in the society, do the interaction by learning the sign language, right. What is objectification? Objectification happens when these externalized products acquire their own meaning. For instance, the wheelchair symbol is universally recognized as designating accessible parking space and bathrooms for disabled people. See, objectification means now wheelchair is used as a symbol to refer to people with disabilities, right. So, let us say for example, in a public bathrooms, when they want to show that this washroom is accessible for people with disabilities, they put the tag of, they put the symbol of wheelchair, and we get to know or we see now here what is happening. The object wheelchair is now associated with people with disabilities. So, externalization, what was that? There was a wheelchair which was there to help people with disabilities. So, there are certain external product which were used by people with disabilities or by other people. Now, it is objectified. So, this external product has now acquired meaning. Now, wheelchair, when you do look at wheelchair, it is not wheelchair only. You understand that it has something to do with disabled people. When you sit in this chair, it means that people with people will presume that you are disabled. When even if an able body is using wheelchair, it will be thought as if he or she is disabled. Where does this understanding come from? Third one, that is internalization. Internalization takes place when people learn so-called objective facts about reality from others during the socialization process, integrating these facts into their own subjective consciousness. Consequently, people socialized within similar cultures tend to share perception of reality, and they rarely question the origin of these beliefs or their rationale. The stigmatization of an attitude toward people with mental illness serve as a prime example of this internalizing process. This is extremely significant concept if you are entering into disability studies. So, here internalization means now the objective facts which was created about reality has become has become part of the socialization process. And now these facts are integrated into our subjective consciousness. So people are socialized with those cultures in that way, with that shared perception of reality. Wheelchair users are disabled people. This has become a reality now, right? And we all know that we are not ready to change our beliefs, our ingrained beliefs, our cultural perception, however wrong it is. It needs very critical thinking and practice to question that. So this also develops, this also goes one step ahead where stigmatization started taking place now. Because now we have realized that, okay, wheelchair simply means even able-bodied absent do not enter into the washrooms where there is an image of wheelchair. It's not for the reason that obviously they are sensitive and that I understood, but also there is an implied meaning where they think, oh hey, I am not disabled, I am able-bodied, I am not supposed to use that. It's for disabled people, is a different category which comes from somewhere else. You see this interestingly division in the society itself, where you identify yourself as an able-bodied, obviously with certain prerogative understanding that you have of yourself as an ability, and then not disability, I am not this. So which is why I am not supposed to access this, I am not supposed to use this. This is not for me, this is for them, us versus them. This division is created. Us versus them is created. That's the point I wanted to make that. And so the point what I wanted to make is this, that how Burgeon and Luckman is talking about it, how this reality is constructed through externalization, objectification and internalization. So to conclude this lecture, I would like to say that in the fundamental understanding of disability, there are many new ways to look at disability studies, right? And how reality is constructed, how disability has been foregrounded from multiple perspectives. We need to think about all this, right? So when we are looking at certain constructed reality, how we can question that constructed reality is only possible when we read and engage with Burgeon, Luckman and other sociological and political and cultural thinkers, right? They are extremely significant to make aware of us what disability studies is and how we are going to think about disability. So these three processes that I was talking about, externalization, objectification and internalization, they are extremely significant to question the way reality is constructed in our society. So with this, I would like to end my lecture. Please read, think and argue with the books that you are reading so that you can develop your own understanding and thinking about disability studies. So we'll meet next time. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.